When your immigration attorney lets you down, is there something you can do to fix your case? I mean, what happens if the lawyer really screws up? They don't show up for court. They didn't file something that had to be filed within a certain deadline. Is there anything you could do about that? Do you get another bite at the apple? Sometimes, but not always. That's what we're going to talk about in this video. My main goal for this particular video is to save somebody from giving up too early, because a lot of times people just throw their hands up. You know, oh my God, my lawyer, they really screwed me, and they just give up. And that's not necessarily the right course to go, because you might still have some legal options. So let's take a look at this. Mainly what we're talking about is the ineffective assistance of counsel, meaning that your lawyer's counsel, legal advice, legal actions were ineffective. I just want to reiterate that you shouldn't compare your case with somebody else's case. You know, I know somebody, it's just like your case. No, it's not. It's never just like your case. Every case is distinct. So keep in mind that this video is just given for informational purposes. This is not to be construed as legal advice, because I don't know the details of your case. You need to talk to your own attorney to figure out what's best for you. But what happens if that attorney screws it up? Okay, let's take a look at that. I'm also going to end the video with some suggestions about red flags that you could be looking out for, things that you can do to protect yourself before you find out that you're in a really bad spot because your attorney screwed up. The first thing to keep in mind is that not every mistake counts, okay? A lot of times I'll hear clients say things like, my attorney doesn't answer my phone calls. Actually, that is the number one complaint about attorneys, is that they don't return phone calls. But they'll say, oh, my lawyer was terrible. My lawyer never explained anything. My lawyer charged exorbitant fees. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I never understood what was going on in the case. Okay, well, these things, they might be really annoying, but they don't rise to the level of ineffective assistance of counsel. Maybe your lawyer was a braggart. You didn't like him. He dismissed your questions, things like that. Well, listen, these are all red flags, which we'll talk about again at the end, but if you don't like your lawyer and you've actually confronted your lawyer and said, listen, I know you explained this to me last time, but I still don't have it. So can you explain it to me again? And that lawyer should be patient enough to re-explain the situation. You should always understand what's going on with your case. However, if he's already done this 5 times and you still don't get it, then you can't be surprised if he's going to say, look, I'll send you a letter and I'll write it all down in a letter to explain to you what you have to do. Because a lawyer's time is valuable. Everybody's time is valuable. But you're going to start pissing off the lawyer if you constantly are calling him and then you get pissed off because he didn't return my phone call. Yeah, because it's the 15th time you've called him this week. Don't expect him to call you back every single time. A lot of times lawyers have paralegals. They'll help you. If it's a real small office, they might not have a para, but they've got a secretary, and the secretary will help you. And in firms like that, you can presume that if the paralegal told you to do X, and I don't mean just some paralegal that's not connected to a law firm. I mean somebody who actually goes to work every day at a law firm, and he or she sits at a desk, and they have your file, and they also speak to the attorney on a regular basis, if not daily, at least weekly. The lawyer, I was a paralegal for many years before I became an attorney, and you sit down with your partner, whoever it is, sometimes it's a partner, sometimes it's an associate that the para works for. And generally speaking, they work for that particular attorney or that particular lawyer. And every week, the lawyer wants an update. So it's not like the lawyer is out of the loop. So if the para has told you, listen, before we can proceed, we need you to bring us X, Y, and Z, then you can assume that the attorney has told her to do that. It's not just something she's made up. Okay? Now that's totally different if this is somebody who just calls themselves a paralegal, or they say, oh, I have all this experience, I can help you, and my prices are lower than lawyers, but they're not really attorneys and they're not connected to an attorney. That's a whole different kettle of fish. So as I was saying, these things don't rise to the level of ineffective assistance of counsel. Here's what you have to be on the lookout for. The law wants to know if the lawyer's actions actually prejudiced your immigration case. For instance, most people know that if you come in and you want to apply for asylum, you have to apply within 1 year. Well, if you got an attorney as soon as you possibly could, and you brought in your evidence and you sat down with somebody and made a whole statement about everything, you have as much evidence as you could possibly bring in, and you brought it in 3 months or 4 months, and then the lawyer never filed it, and a whole year goes by and that deadline's been blown, that would be ineffective assistance of counsel. Okay? One thing I would tell people to do, listen, I don't want you to be a nudge. I don't want you to be constantly on the horn, constantly emailing. Did you do this? Did you do that? Did you do this? But I don't know how many times I had clients over the years write to me or call me the week after the deadline. Let's say they know that the deadline is July 31st. And they wait until August 5th to give me a call. By the way, just wanted to know, did you file my package? It had to be back by such and such a day. Okay. Now, number one, the lawyer, yes, should have filed that package because they have what's called tickler systems where they get notifications to not forget that this has a deadline, that has a deadline. There's lots of different ways that lawyers keep track of stuff. But do yourself a favor, okay? You know this deadline is coming up. Call him 4 days, 5 days ahead of time. Just say, I just want to make sure we're still on track. Is there anything else you need? Because even though it would be ineffective assistance of counsel if he blew the deadline, you don't want to have a problem and then point a finger. Try to prevent that from happening by giving him a call a couple of days ahead of time. Shoot him an email. Most attorneys that I know won't accept texts because, I don't know about you, but my texts get lost all the time. So, either a phone call or an email or something. Better, an email that keeps, then you have a record that you wrote to him on such and such a day to give him a little nudge to say, is this still on track? So, but don't do it after the deadline because that's, I don't know why, and that happened I don't know how many times. And I was not, that was one problem I didn't generally have, was blowing deadlines. I can't think of one time. To be totally honest, I'm not trying to toot my horn, but I don't remember ever blowing a deadline. To be totally honest. I had other problems. I was one of those lawyers that didn't return phone calls all the time. I did do that. But I don't think I ever blew a deadline. But anyway, I digress. So basically, the standard that the law is looking for is, would the outcome of the case be different if the lawyer had done A instead of B? A lot of people think that if the lawyer lost the case, then the lawyer screwed it up. And that's simply not true. Sometimes, but not always. I mean, look, a lot of immigration cases are very difficult. Sometimes the government has overwhelming evidence um, that the lawyer doesn't know about when they first take the case. Sometimes the clients aren't completely honest with the lawyer about how things are. They don't, and sometimes that's because they don't remember. For instance, one of the questions that should be asked at the consultation is, well, if you came over here with a visitor's visa, what did you tell the consular officer? And sometimes they just don't remember, but sometimes they do. Sometimes they told the consular officer that they were married, and they were, and they go and they get this visitor's visa. And one of the reasons that they're given the visitor's visa is because they think, at least the officer thinks, that because they're married, they're going to return to their home country. But before they leave their home country, they start a divorce in their home country. And that was their intention. As soon as they get their visa, they're going to start this divorce. Or they come over to the United States, and as soon as they get here, then they start the divorce. But they don't necessarily tell the lawyer that. That's a problem. Sometimes they misrepresent how stable the marriage is. You know, she thinks that maybe he's cheating, but she doesn't want to tell the lawyer that. And she's not going to get divorced anyway until this is all done. They're not exactly forthcoming, shall we say. So try to be as honest with your attorney as you can be. And, even the best attorneys, the most expensive attorneys, the ones with the best reputations in the whole city, they can't guarantee success because it's not them making the decision. In fact, that's one of the things I would tell you, that if you go to a consultation and the lawyer says to you, this is a slam dunk. You have don't worry about it. I've done hundreds, thousands of these. Don't worry about it. Yes, well, I can't guarantee it, but, I can pretty much guarantee it. Run away from that attorney because he can't guarantee diddly squat because he's not making the decision. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of this. What is ineffective assistance of counsel? Sometimes an attorney's mistakes are so egregious that fairness requires that the client, the immigrant, receives another opportunity. The leading case, I would call it the leading case on ineffective assistance of counsel, is Matter of Lozada. Lozada. Matter of Lozada. It's a BIA case, which is Board of Immigration Appeals. It's a BIA case that lays out all the requirements for ineffective assistance of counsel. And I'm going to go through those requirements with you. So here are some examples of situations that do qualify for ineffective assistance of counsel. The attorney failed to file the asylum application within the 1-year deadline, even though you did everything that you were supposed to. Or there was the same thing with an RFE, and he didn't get the response to the request for evidence back in on time. Or you were going to appeal this case, and he missed the deadline for that. Those are all valid reasons to file for ineffective assistance of counsel. Sometimes the attorney doesn't tell the client that he's got a court hearing coming up, or that there's an asylum interview coming up, and the client never got any notice of it. The attorney got the notice, but for some reason something happened, and they never told the client about it, so the client doesn't show up for this interview. which causes immigration to deny the case. And sometimes the attorney just gives like really crappy advice, gives really bad legal advice. They might be new. They might not really know what they're doing, but you think they know what they're doing. And that advice, which you relied upon, caused some serious harm. So all of those situations qualify. But not every mistake qualifies for ineffective assistance of counsel. By the way, if you're getting some value out of this, please hit subscribe, hit like. It really helps the algorithm to push this out to more people. I only have 150 subscribers at this point. I'm trying to get up to 200. If you can help me out, I'd appreciate that. And also, these are the types of videos that I do where I try to explain to people a lot of the terminology that the other immigration attorneys that you're watching don't necessarily have time to explain. So if you're getting some value out of this, please hit subscribe so you don't miss any of my future videos. And check out the other videos that I have. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about examples that don't qualify. The lawyer, like I mentioned, the lawyer doesn't return every phone call. The lawyer is rude. The lawyer didn't dress professionally. The lawyer predicted that you would win, but you lost. The judge disagreed with your evidence. Or sometimes the judge doesn't find you credible. You go up on the witness stand, and even though the lawyer has prepped you and you've answered the questions as truthfully as you can, the judge doesn't believe you. That's not going to qualify because that's not the lawyer's fault. You have to show prejudice. You have to show that the lawyer's actions caused a problem for you. So basically what the law requires is that the lawyer did something that he shouldn't have done or didn't do something that he should have done. That's one. And two is that that action or lack of action caused a serious problem for your case. So now that we've talked about what ineffective assistance of counsel is and when it's not, let's talk a little bit about what you can do if you really do think that your lawyer screwed up your case. As I mentioned, Matter of Lozada, very important BIA case which lays out the requirements. We're going to go through each of the requirements. It's not going to take very long. The first one, you're going to be surprised by. You can't just go into court and say, huh, my old attorney really screwed this up and I want a new hearing. That's not going to work. The first thing you need to do is to lay out what exactly happened in an affidavit. And an affidavit is simply a sworn statement. And by sworn, generally, it means that it's notarized, that you're going to notarize the statement. Anytime you have to do an affidavit, which you do for asylum applications, cancellation of removal, there's all kinds of times when you're going to need to have an affidavit. I always tell people to do it in a chronological order. And by that I mean by time, okay? When did you hire this attorney? What was said at the time that you hired this attorney? And then basically walk it through the baby steps as to this happened, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened. Now, think about it. To be able to do that, what do you need? You need to know exactly when things happened. So I hope that you are keeping track of all your emails, your phone calls. You should have a little log. I tell people to do this all the time. Have it be if you're thinking about getting a divorce, if you're thinking about doing a VAWA case, I tell them all the time, keep a record, keep a little notebook. This is when I called. I called him on Friday the 1st, and it took him until Friday the 8th to actually respond back to me, at which point we had already lost the opportunity to do blah, blah, blah. Okay, you're going to have to keep all your emails, all your letters, and keep a record of all your phone calls and appointments that you've had with your attorney. So, like I said, the first thing you're gonna say is when you hired this attorney, what you hired this attorney to do. You should have a fee agreement from him. I mean, normally there's one of two ways that attorneys show that they have been hired by clients. One is they prepare and give you a copy of the fee agreement that lays out how much everything is going to be and when those payments are going to be due. Sometimes attorneys just write that in a letter. I always did a fee agreement, but so it's either a letter or a fee agreement, and that's going to be one of the exhibits that you're going to give to the court. When you hired him, what you hired him to do, what you expected him to do, what he actually did, what he failed to do, and how his actions affected your case. Now listen, this is not the time to be writing emotional attacks against your attorney about what a jerk he is. Oh, and by the way, he also didn't do this, and he didn't answer my phone calls, and he was rude to me, and I went in on a Saturday and he was just dressed in blue jeans. What kind of an attorney does that? You don't include that kind of crap. Okay, first of all, it's irrelevant, and this is not the time to get all emotional. You're trying to be logical, think like a judge. He wants things in chronological order, something that is easy to understand. Okay? When did you hire him? What did you hire him to do? What did he do? What did he not do? And how this hurt your case. That's the affidavit. I'm assuming you're going to use a new attorney to do that. He or she should be able to help you with the affidavit. But generally speaking, the first person to begin writing that affidavit is you. So try to be as accurate as you can be, particularly with dates. The more specific you are, the more credible you seem. Okay? Don't be vague about things. Well, I thought I was getting work permission when really you were applying for asylum. Okay? Try to be as specific as you possibly can be. Keep good records, as I've already mentioned. You need your emails, your text messages. If you happen to have an attorney who uses texts, a lot of attorneys won't. Keep all your receipts for the money that you've paid. And for the filing fees, maybe you have a receipt for, X amount of money that was supposed to go to file for your adjustment of status, and he never filed it, for 2 years. Keep track of all that stuff. Your hearing notices. And of course, any kind of letters that you got from him. Any kind of email or actual letters in the mail. You never know when a document's going to become important. Don't throw anything out. You should have a file. A literal, actual damn file in your house. I know people keep the stuff on their phones. They keep the stuff on their hard drives. That's fine. Keep a hard copy just in case something happens, right? Keep a hard copy of everything. I know it sounds old school and she's a boomer. Yes, I am. And believe me, well, if you could see this office is covered in paper. But make sure you have access to all of your stuff, not just in one place. Better 2 places, better 3 places. Don't presume, by the way. Don't presume you're going to go over and ask him to give you a copy of your file. Don't presume that he's going to give you what we call is work product. He's going to give you what he filed. He should give you a copy of the fee agreement. There's certain things that when you ask for your file, you should get. Any kind of original notices you should get. But if he was playing around with your affidavit and working on it left and right and made maybe 16 different copies of it because he kept tweaking it and changing it, he might not give you that because that's considered work product. And then if you say he never did anything on my case, he can show in rebuttal that yes, I did. On such and such a day, I did version number 1. Three days later, I did version number 2, version number 3. You might not get that, at least not in the beginning. Okay? So don't presume that, well, my attorney's got all that stuff. You should have all that stuff too. Okay? Very important. And I don't care what kind of a case you have, whether he screwed it up or he didn't. Make sure you have a copy of everything. Now, requirement number 2, which oftentimes people don't like, makes them uncomfortable. You have to notify your previous attorney that you're going to be filing for ineffective assistance of counsel. And a lot of times people don't want to do that because they don't want to piss off the attorney, and they're worried sick that, oh my God, then he could really screw me. He's got all my information and he could really screw this up for me. What happens if he notifies ICE? Blah, 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 blah. Okay, attorneys are not allowed to do that. We are not allowed to do anything that's going to harm a client or even a client that we had in the past. We can't do anything that hurts people, okay? What is it the doctor's creed is? Like, first do no harm or something. We have something similar that basically says, no, we can't do that. We can't turn you into ICE so that you automatically get deported and now we don't have to worry about you. Okay, no. In fact, I've known many attorneys that have fallen on the sword for the client where they did something that they shouldn't have done and they don't have any problem admitting that they made a mistake. Okay? So they're not allowed to do that. Their toes will be held to the fire if they cause any kind of problem like that for you. So don't sweat that. But you do have to notify them. And you have to tell them. Now, why is that? Well, you have to tell them because you have to put them on notice, give them an opportunity to rebut this stuff. You have to think about this. Did you even talk to your attorney about this? You might have just gotten really pissed off because it comes in that it was denied, and he told you that this was probably not going to get denied, and now you're pissed off and he screwed this up. But have you sat down calmly and talked to him about this? Maybe not. Well, now you're going to have to, because you at least have to notify him that you're going to file for ineffective assistance of counsel. And one of the reasons you have to tell him that is the next requirement is that you have to actually file a complaint with whatever is the board in your state that handles licensure of attorneys. Now, that wasn't always a requirement, but since Lozada, which has been the law for ages, you have to do it. All right, you have to file a bar complaint with the appropriate disciplinary authority. That's the fancy way of saying it, to demonstrate that the claim you're offering is to prove that you're really serious about this. You're not just trying to get a delay. One time I had the disciplinary board contact me in all my 40 years. Of course, that's scary. And anyway, like I said, it was kind of scary. And I get this phone call, and she says, did you have a client named so-and-so? I'll say Jose Santos. I don't know. And that wasn't his name, by the way. And she explained to me that he was down in Florida, and he had filed a bar complaint against me, saying that I had charged exorbitant fees, that they never had any understanding of what exactly I was doing or what, why they were paying all these fees. And I said, well, that's strange, because she says, well, he speaks Spanish. And I said, yeah, but when I have a client who speaks Spanish, I always do the fee agreement in Spanish. Hold on a second, let me check. And I put her on hold, and it just so happened that I still had that file in my filing cabinet. And I knew exactly what he was doing. He had gotten his case denied in court, and he had, I guess, moved down to Florida to try to avoid getting picked up by ICE, I presume. I don't know. And now he's trying to get this reopened down in Florida. And he has, like I said, he has to file a bar complaint. So I get this. But I opened up my file, and right there on the left-hand side where they always are, there was the fee agreement. I sent it over to her. I said, do you need it in, I can translate it for you because I have the identical fee agreement in English. And she said, no, that's good. That's good. We have people who speak Spanish and read Spanish. And she called me back about 10, 15 minutes later. And she says, you're good. She says, that's fine. Those fees aren't crazy. And obviously he signed it and his wife signed it. And it was written in their language, so they can't say that they didn't understand it. So that went away, but that was still scary anyway. But that's also why I keep track of every single case I ever had, right? Lawyers have to save cases for 7 years. So basically, every state has an organization, an agency of some kind that investigates attorney misconduct. And they investigate allegations such as fraud, dishonesty, conflicts of interest, abandonment of clients, that you just stopped working on their case and like disappeared, misuse of clients' funds, that's a biggie, where like you've given the attorney filing fees and they've used it to pay their phone bill. Okay, stuff like that. That's not good. Other violations of professional ethics, right? But notice something important, okay? The disciplinary board does not have anything to do with your immigration case. It's not going to decide your case. Its job is simply to determine whether or not the lawyer violated professional rules, okay? But what happens if you don't want to file a complaint against your lawyer? Well, there are some valid reasons. Like, number one, the lawyer passed away. Well, you can't file against the law firm. You can only file against that particular lawyer, and if he's passed, he's passed. Maybe he's already been disbarred, in which case, what's the point? There might be some other unusual circumstance. I don't know. But in your affidavit, you have to explain, if you're not filing a complaint, a bar complaint against the lawyer, you're going to have to explain it. And as you only heard a couple of reasons, as you just heard, there's only a couple of reasons that's going to fly, okay? Like, person died. Not every bad outcome is because of misconduct. Lawyers lose cases. Doctors lose patients. Contractors, sometimes they build houses that have things that are screwed up down the road, okay? Every professional should be trying to do their best, but nobody's perfect. And the court is not looking for perfection, but they are looking to make sure that the lawyer abides by a certain level of professional ethics. So now what about notarios and immigration consultants? People I talk about a lot on this particular channel. Can you file against them? Well, generally speaking, I'm going to say no, all right? Because they're not lawyers, and you're not supposed to be using them in the first place. Sometimes you can do it against accredited reps. Now, accredited reps are different. They've been approved by, I believe it is the BIA. They work for organizations like Catholic Social Services, the Lutherans and the Presbyterians. They also have some immigration agencies that are under their umbrella. Sometimes it's a community group like HIAS here in Philadelphia. Sometimes it's just like a community group that has opened up, and they have gotten permission to have certain people become accredited reps. They work under the tutelage of an attorney, okay? But they're allowed to represent you in front of immigration, USCIS, the courts, etc. So sometimes in those situations, yes, but I'm going to say if you used a notario and they screwed up your case, I'm not sure you're going to be able to get your case reopened because of that, because you weren't supposed to do that in the first place. Now, I understand that notarios are like, I am a Spanish speaker, and a lot of times, people just thought that, well, in my country, a notario, it's like being a lawyer. Well, it's not like being a lawyer here, okay? Basically, all they're allowed to do is notarize the fact that you are the person who signed this document. That's it. They don't have any right to give you legal advice, to tell you what forms to use, to answer your questions. They're not allowed to do any of that. That's all practicing law without a license. And if you used one of them and they screwed it up, I'm not sure that's going to be enough to get your case reopened. And the whole reason you're doing this, filing the bar complaint and all this stuff, is to try and get your case reopened. And I have a whole video on what's the difference between motions to reopen, motions to reconsider, and appealing. What are those three different ones? I'll link it at the end, so that you can just watch that one again. If you haven't watched it yet, you can watch it. And please hit subscribe, by the way. I have to throw that in every once in a while. Please hit subscribe if you're getting some help out of this. I would appreciate your support. What are some of the mistakes people make? Well, as usual, I always say this, most of the time when my clients made a mistake, it's not that they did something wrong. It's that they didn't do what they could do when they could do it. They wait too long. That's probably the number one mistake. They're just hoping that this is going to fix itself, which it probably isn't. There's a big difference between the client who gets the letter that says your case has been denied, and they think, you know what, this lawyer drives me crazy, I'm taking my case away. And they immediately contact the attorney. They say, I want a copy of my file. And then they go and they get that file, they call another attorney, they make an appointment, and they get on this bandwagon to try and do whatever they can to fix this thing. That is completely different from sitting there waiting, saying, oh shit, man, I got to do something about this. God, this got denied like three months ago. That's too long, okay? If you see that you have a problem with the case and you think it's because of the attorney or for whatever reason, make sure you get moving on this as quickly as possible. Do not delay. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the motion to reopen, okay? That's when you're asking the immigration court or the BIA to give you another chance at this. And when that motion to reopen is based on ineffective assistance of counsel, you're basically saying that you didn't receive a fair opportunity to present your case because your attorney's representation sucked. That's not how you're going to say it, but it caused prejudice. Your attorney's representation caused prejudice, okay? If the motion is granted, the court just doesn't automatically change its decision, right? It's going to give you an opportunity to represent your case. Now, you know what I was just saying about do this as quickly as possible? What's the deadline for a motion to reopen? As of right now, 90 days. Those things can change. Trump is turning everything upside down on its head. But to the best of my knowledge, it's 90 days from the time of the decision. So don't delay. And you have to understand, if you're going to hire a new attorney, they need time to get up to speed with this case. Don't wait until it's the 85th day and say, I really need you to do this now. I mean, they might take that case, but they're going to jack up the price. If it's a rush job and you had 3 months and you just been sitting on this and finally you hire this new attorney, don't be surprised if it's going to cost a whole lot more than what you expected it to cost. Now, one little exception to that. Let's say you didn't notice this problem until a couple of years later. To be honest with you, I cannot come up with a scenario where that would happen. You know, but it could be, not years later, but let's say you didn't find this out until 4 months later. And you didn't find it out until 4 months later because you were in the hospital because you had a very serious car accident. And you were in the hospital for months. And you just got out of the hospital and you had all these papers, all these letters and stuff dumped on your bed. And that's when you realized that you have this big problem. That could be an exception. Again, it's going to be something you're going to put in that affidavit. It's going to be in the cover letter. There might even be a brief that your attorney is going to prepare for that. It's called equitable tolling. They basically just hold the filing deadline in abeyance for a little bit, just because of your situation. I don't know if that would also work because you were in prison, because there's also that doctrine of clean hands, and if you've been locked up for 3 months, I'm not sure that would actually work, but it might. Anyway, it's worth a shot. So you're going to have to show some kind of exceptional circumstance if you're not going to be able to make it under that 90 days. Now, one last thing I want to talk to you about is that, filing a bar complaint can cause a problem for a lawyer. That's true. But it's not the same thing as filing for malpractice, filing against the attorney for malpractice. That you're going to need a whole different type of attorney, because I don't think most immigration attorneys would represent you against one of their own. But there are other attorneys that will, to file a malpractice suit against the attorney. And that's generally for fraud, right? That's for something that's way beyond negligence. That's where they took all this money from you in filing fees and $10,000 plus the filing fees, and they never gave you any of it back, and they just said go pound sand, right? Things like that, where they've stolen money from you, or they've used your personal information on other people's stuff. I actually just looked at a case that involved, it was a notaria in Philadelphia, and that's what she got locked up for, that actually, for mail fraud and what's it called, where they use your identity. I mean, people who had given her information so that they could be like co-sponsors, joint sponsors for some people. She'd used that information for somebody else. Somebody else that didn't have a joint sponsor. She just used somebody else's information and and faked their signatures. And I mean, she got herself really jammed up. But anyway, that was a notaria. Who I actually knew her personally. I told her, why don't you go to law school? You have a college degree. Go to law school. You want to do this. You want to do immigration law. Just go to law school. And she says, it's too much money and it's too much time. Guess what? She ended up spending some time behind bars because she wouldn't go to law school and do things the right way. So just keep in mind that That's also a possibility, a malpractice suit. That's beyond this video, okay? Whether or not you can file for malpractice for your immigration case. But it's not going to change, that doesn't, even if you win that case, that doesn't change your immigration situation, okay? So they're two totally different legal proceedings. One doesn't replace the other one, okay? You might have to do both. Okay, so we're going to end it real quick with just a couple of ways that you can try to protect yourself so that this doesn't happen to you, okay? I've already told you, keep copies of everything and keep them. You want to keep them on your computer? Great. If not, you should also, well, not if not, you should also, in my ever so humble opinion, keep an actual file, hard copy file. That's all your applications, your petitions, your supporting evidence, your receipts, your notices, and any correspondence. So anything that you have in writing, make sure you keep. If your attorney disappears tomorrow, this way you at least will know what's been filed and when it was filed. Keep track of your stuff. Number 2, read stuff before you sign it. I mean, I don't know how many people say, well, I didn't read it. They just said here, sign here. Well, now what? Make sure you read everything before you sign it. And if you don't understand something, ask the lawyer or whoever happens to be sitting with you. At that point, it might be a para. I don't know. Your signature, particularly on the immigration paperwork, your signature tells the government that you believe it's true and correct. Don't come back later and say, oh, you put my birth date in wrong. Well, why didn't you tell me that before you signed it? Because they didn't look at it before they signed it. They find it later. Now, sometimes in court and at interviews and stuff, you can fix that stuff. We found a couple discrepancies that need to be changed. But make sure you read your stuff before you sign it, okay? Watch for red flags, okay? I already mentioned one of them. If you have an attorney that says, I guarantee you this, you have a 99% chance of getting this thing through, run. Run! Because he can't guarantee you anything, okay? And that shows bad faith. That he either doesn't know what he's doing or he needs money this month. And he's figuring you're going to be that money bag coming in. Be careful with somebody who says, well, I have special connections with USCIS. I actually knew an attorney that did that. In fact, I think he got his license suspended, if I'm not mistaken. Because he had worked at USCIS before he went off and practiced on his own. And he said, in fact, this was not in my law office. This was a place I had a 1-year contract with somebody. And she came in and told me, she says, he told me that if I paid an extra $500, he could get this through faster. And I'm like, excuse me? And so she did. She paid him an extra $500, which went straight into his pocket. And I went straight upstairs to the big man, to the guy who I was working for, and I said, we have a problem. And they ended up refunding her all of her money plus the $500. And I don't think that managing partner did anything about it. Because again, we don't like to file against each other. But what the hell? What a dirtbag. Anyway, another one, I mentioned it before too, where they say, just sign here. That's all you have to do, sign here. Never sign a blank form. A lot of places do that. We'll fill it in for you. Don't worry about it. Never sign a blank form. Or if they just say, just sign here. It's getting late. Just sign here. Make sure you sit there and read everything. Say, well, maybe you have to come back tomorrow because I'm not done reading this yet. Or I'll take it home, I'll read it, and then I'll bring it back to you signed. How's that? Never do anything never sign something that you haven't read. If you say something like, I'll take care of everything. You don't have to worry about a thing. I'll take care of everything. Well, that's not true. That's not true, especially in immigration, because we need so much information from you guys. You guys are the ones that have to help us and prepare and give us information that we need to make your case strong. Like if you have an asylum claim that says you're a member of Jehovah's Witness, we need proof from you that you are an actual member of Jehovah's Witness. Okay? And if you feel that something is wrong, if you feel that this lawyer, maybe you made a mistake, get your file back as quickly as possible. Be polite. Don't be rude. Don't make a big brouhaha in the middle of the office saying you guys are a bunch of shitheads, blah, 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 screaming and yelling. Don't do that, okay? Just say, you know what, I'm not comfortable with how things are going. Sometimes the attorney can help you and calm you down a little bit and explain to you why things are being delayed. But if it still doesn't feel right, say, with all due respect, I'd like a copy of my file, and exit stage left. The sooner you act, the more options you're going to have, okay? If you wait until he says, no, it's getting filed, this is getting filed on Friday. Why would you go out and pay another attorney? We've already done all this work for you. It's going out on Friday. Don't worry. Well, that's a judgment call, okay? But if come Monday he hasn't filed it, go Monday afternoon and get the damn file, because he's lying to you. Final thoughts. Number 1, hit subscribe. No, sorry. You have to understand that hiring an immigration attorney, it's one of the biggest decisions you're going to make, and it's scary and it's expensive. And by the way, even if you don't have any immigration problems yet, or you don't have even, you're not married to anybody, start setting some money aside. A million years ago, an associate, when I was just starting law school, he says, what kind of immigration are you going to do? Business immigration or family? And I said, well, I really don't like business immigration. That's the H-1s and the labor certs and stuff. I said, but I really love family immigration. And he says, Bev, let me just tell you, every business in their budget has a line for legal fees. No family budget has a line for legal fees. And it's actually true that the immigration attorneys that handle basically immigration, like strike that business immigration, they make a whole lot more money than we that do family immigration and deportation work and humanitarian stuff like VAWA and TPS and asylum. We don't make all that much money yet, but the business guys do, because they can afford to charge more, because the businesses already know that they're going to need lawyers. So just a word to the wise, even if you're not married yet, if you don't know, if you just got here and you're not really sure, you haven't had a problem with ICE yet, start setting some money aside. $50 a month, $100 a month into a separate little account, just in case. Because sooner or later, you're going to need that money, either because you had a problem or because you met Mr. Wonderful. And now you're going to get married, and it's going to cost you $10,000 to do this marriage case. Because by then it might cost you $10,000. It shouldn't cost you more than $8,000 right now. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Make sure you save up your money, just in case you either have a problem or you have something good that happens, but you're going to need a lawyer to help you with it. Save up your money and keep records of everything, right? And don't delay. Don't wait. Don't think that this is going to somehow fix itself. And that's it. I'm going to go and look forward to seeing you in the next video. If you like what you saw, hit like. That really helps the algorithm. It sends this out a little bit. And that's it for now. And thanks very much for taking the time. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.